Hello, sorry about that. OBS just basically froze. And it wasn't responding to any of my commands. But anyway, hello, welcome to Songwriting Simplified. My God, that was such a distracting start because I was just like panicking for a second there. So yes, hello, welcome to Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk in the Midlothian area of Scotland, in the UK, and all the other stuff, which I'm not going to say. I hope everybody is doing well. Sorry about the stuttery start, but yeah, OBS was just like not doing what I wanted it to do. And so I was distracted, and then I pressed the fader port button twice to start the theme tune, which was not brilliant either. So pretty shit start to tell the truth. But anyway, I hope everybody has had a good few days, and since Sunday, because you know now we're doing 2 shows a week. Yeah, I hope everyone's had a great few days. We are currently here. I don't normally talk about the weather, but we're currently here under a severe amber weather warning for torrential rain. And they're talking about potentially 200 or more millimeters of rain. Which to some of you folks, especially in the United States, you're going to say 200 millimeters. That's not a lot of rain. Well, you have to bear in mind that parts of Midlothian have already had about 3 months of rain in the last week. So the ground is already saturated beyond belief, and rivers are close to bursting point. So we are expecting to receive 200 millimeters of rain tomorrow, and then potentially more over the next 4 days. So we are expecting to get 4 days and 4 nights of torrential downpours. It's a very rare weather event, so it could lead to quite a lot of disruption, and certainly my Sunday show possibly might not go ahead because it is possible that we may need to be evacuated, but we will see. I'll keep you updated. Please be sure that you have subscribed to the channel, because if you subscribe to the channel, you get to participate, you get to say hello in the chat, you get to ask good questions and all of that stuff, but also you'll get access to the community post section, and you'll see if the show on Sunday is not going to go ahead, I will put a post up there basically letting you all know that the show is not happening because we've had to evacuate, or we've got no power, or something like that, because all of those things are definitely very much in play. Just a wee bit further north of us, they are under a red warning, which they issue maybe once in 20 or 30 years. But they have issued a red warning for life-threatening weather just a wee bit further north of us. So it's a wee bit kind of scary for us here at the moment, but it may not amount to as much as we think. But certainly, you know, they don't issue red warnings and amber warnings unless they are very, very certain that you know, there's a high degree of accuracy to the forecasting. So we'll see. It could be weird. It could be a wee bit scary, and hopefully our nice brand new 2-year-old house does not get damaged. So yeah, that could be something. All right, so Billy Morgan was first in the door. He managed to get his ranking back. Well done, Billy. Christina over in Denmark was in next, followed by Ron Figura, and poor Christopher, he goes, he says, I don't even care anymore, I'm 37th. Christopher, you are proper darn it hilarious. You really are. And of course, Tura Shiva is here. Hello, my dear. Glad you are here. Welcome. And we got Harley Bob here as well. And we got Stephen Wilson. And we got Tony Cardona. We got Paul Morgan. We got Don Oliver. And we got Brett Marla, who says, can we submit more than one version of a song? Yes, you can. You certainly can submit more than one entry to the challenge. But if you've got one version of your song that you favor over the other, that you think is better, then please submit that one. I mean, you can certainly submit different entries for sure, but I'm not necessarily sure that I like the idea of multiple versions of the same thing. I will talk to Rich about that. Just Bob says, stopping in to say hi, tap the like button. You all need to tap the like button. Yes, absolutely. It helps me, definitely. Yes, it really does. So please do hit the like button if you like what I do here on this show, just broadly in general, or if you like tonight's particular show, please hit the like button on your way out the door. I would appreciate it. That would be very, very cool. Let's see. Who else do we got? We got Danny Taylor here, and we got Stephen who has a question about 432. Yeah, not necessarily my favorite subject, but I will try and cover it as objectively as I possibly can from a purely musicological and scientific standpoint. That's the only way I can talk about things like, you know, recording or performing music tuned where everything is tuned to A being set to 432 hertz. If you don't know what that is, don't worry. It's not a big drama. It really isn't, because the accepted standard of A being 440 hertz has been around for quite a wee while, and everybody is pretty much, you know, kind of being preconditioned to it now because it's been around for so long. But yeah. I'm sorry, Billy, but that's just too funny. But yeah, not necessarily appropriate either, Billy. So please kind of moderate your own comment there, please. All right, so let's go and check out the questions. Now, I know that that my good friend Bob Berda, who is probably trying very, very hard to stay awake, he may even be, you know, kind of nodding off just now at the sound of my own voice. He had a question he asked me just a few days ago, so we're gonna tackle that one first, and then we'll get to the other one that Stephen had, and then we'll go from there. We'll kind of roll from that point. All right. So Bob's question, which I now have to go find. Just bear with me 1 second whilst I go find it. If your song starts at 4/4 and you want to move to an irregular time signature like 5/4 or 7/8, where in 4/4 do you transition to make it smooth? And where to transition from irregular back to 4/4 and then move to 6/8 and fade out, or whatever you want to do. All right, so there are some common misunderstandings about changing time signatures. And one of those is that it's always a bit of a jolt and a bit of a jump. It's not necessarily so. And yes, there are ways in which you can smooth it out even more, so you can make it even more deceptive. I'm going to explain a couple of those right now, especially if you're dealing with 4/4 and then you go to 7/8 and then you go back to 4/4. So there's an interesting thing about 7/8. And I think I may well have covered this a couple of years ago, so you probably won't remember. But if you have a time signature like 7/8, where you got 7/8 notes in the bar instead of 8/8 notes, which is what you'd have for 4/4, 4 quarter notes, 8/8 notes, kind of, you get the deal. You're lopping off 1/8 note from the bar to make it into 7/8, basically. And so if you repeat these a few times, but you keep a quarter note pulse going, eventually the quarter notes are going to line up again. So you can use that to help you kind of do 7/8, 7/8, 7/8, and then back to 4/4. And you just do a little bit of math to work out where is it that the downbeats, the beat 1 of the 7/8 bars and the beat 1 of 4/4 line up, and then make that the point where you change back to 4/4. And so that can be accomplished nice and smoothly. And you can use the quarter note pulse to drive that forward, to make the 7/8 things not feel necessarily like 7/8. And there's lots of examples of this being done in popular music where actually the time signature of the song is 4/4, but the phrase, the metering of the phrase of the melody is 7/8. You know, there's a few good examples of that you'll find. The Beatles did it a few times. Because they were definitely into experimenting with 4/4. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop over to Studio One and we're going to create in real time a little example of this. So if you bear with me just a moment, I am going to create a new song. And then I'm going to bring you guys over. There we go. And I'll put myself in the corner. There we go. All right, so here we are. And what we need is we need a couple of instruments. We've got our time signature set to 4/4. I'm going to slow this tempo down quite a bit for good reason. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get 2 instances of impact. There's instance number 1, and we're going to set this with this kit here. All right. I can't really hear that. See, that's a nice sounding drum set, all right? And then what we'll do for contrast is we'll bring in a second instance of impact. But this time we'll choose a different kit. Maybe this kit here, if it loads. There we go. All right, so what I'm going to do is for this, what we're going to do is we're actually going to change the time signature to 7/8. So I can just demonstrate this for you. So we'll set that to 7, and we'll set that to 7/8. And what we'll do is we will open our signature track, and we'll see that 7/8 is set there. Okay. And so what we're going to do is we are going to use this in here to draw in 4 measures. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to draw in quarter notes. 1, 1, 2, 3. So that's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so that one there is wrong. So let's get rid of that one. We're going to put this one here because these are all 8th notes. So this is going to be a quarter note there. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And now notice this, they've now gone off beat. All right, so this is now beat, this is kind of beat 1, but it's delayed. 1, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, and then we're going to go back again to, so this is beat 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I need to zoom a bit over here. And we're going to keep this little off kilter thing going on here. All right, so when I play this, that sounds just like 4/4. All right, so now if I loop this, you guys are going to be absolutely convinced that this is 4/4. Sounds just like 4/4, right? But let's put the metronome on. Make sure we got click in play, and we'll stick on the pre-count for what I'm going to do later. And we've got the click on, so listen to the click and listen to the downbeat, all right? I've set it so that the downbeat has a really strong accent, okay? And I'm going to dial this back because it's going to be confusing otherwise. All right, so have a listen to this. Now, this is a case where that hi-hat is really, really quiet and the click track is too loud. That's okay, we can fix that because we can go into the metronome and we can pull our click track volume down a bit. So what you can hear there is we have something that we call, there's two different names for this actually. One is a rhythmic illusion, the other one is a metric modulation. So you can use these terms interchangeably because essentially they mean the same thing. All right, so what we have here is we have quarter notes, a quarter note pulse going right across our 7/8 time signature. Listen again. 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. All right, so let's say the next part here, let's put the cursor here. This next section here, we're going to insert a time signature of 4/4. Okay. And what we're going to do is we are going to attempt to duplicate that. Now, it doesn't quite fit. We don't have quite enough ticks, but that's okay. We'll just extend it out. There we go. So we have 4 bars of 7/8 and 4 bars of 4/4. Now listen to how smooth this transition between the two time signatures is, or the quarter note pulse over the 7/8 and then back into 4/4. Okay, so I think you kind of get the idea. So what I'm trying to suggest here is if you've got a song which is going to go between 7/8 and 4/4, you can tell your drummer, you can even write it on your chart for your drummer, keep playing that straight 4/4 beat. Okay? Keep playing that 4/4 beat. That's why. So I could play a 7/8 groove here and the hi-hat is going to sound like it's moving across. So if I was to record in here and put in a 7/8 drum beat and then go back to 4/4, but keeping that hi-hat quarter note pulse, you'll get some idea of what I'm talking about. All right, so we'll tidy that up a wee bit. We will select all, and we're going to quantize that to 16ths. Oops. Okay, so let's listen to that. So how do we set this into a song context to make that kind of little transition nice and smooth? I mean, obviously the first half is a little bit more 16th orientated and the second half is a little bit more 4/4. So there does, you know, that kind of change of time signatures is a little bit more obvious, shall we say. But I kind of needed it to be obvious so that you'd understand, A, the difference between the two, and also how you can kind of have a constant that plays throughout both time signatures. So let's try doing like a little piano part to go with this. So maybe let's actually create a little track here, and we can record that in. So if we go mono, and we go input right, there we go. And let's try maybe just recording this in. That will do. All right, let's get our loop back on, turn off the click. Okay, Ron wants to see this in the notation, so we can do that. We can just double click this, and we can go over here, and we can go track, apply tracks preset, and we can go drum set. And then if I open the hamburger icon here, I can get the other track in. Now, obviously, these pitches, that's not real hi-hat. Drum set. There we go. Why is that way down there? I don't know. Anyway. We can move this up here. There we go. And we can change the note head as well. Let's change the note head to an X. There we go. That's a little bit more standard for a hi-hat. All right, so there you can see the hi-hat and the kick and snare. And this is what you get. All right, so I hope that this kind of helps answer this particular question for Bob, to show how you can actually fairly comfortably switch between 7/8 and 4/4. There are other time signatures where the change is maybe not quite so easy to get into. For example, going from 4/4 to 6/8. There is a way that you can do that. So if you're in 4/4 and you're playing your straight eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4, and you know that you're going to be in 6/8, what's the connective tissue there? The connective tissue is the eighth notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Except most people don't phrase 6/8 like that. Most people phrase 6/8 like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you have a decision to make, and your decision is this: is eighth note going to equal eighth note, which is what I just did just then. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what I've done there is I've made eighth note equal eighth note. So the eighth note is the constant value. Okay. So sometimes when you're looking at this on a score, you will see before that little time signature change into 6/8 comes, you'll see eighth note equals eighth note. And that means that you're not gonna do the whole which is what you'd normally associate with 6/8, right? So if you're in the other set of circumstances where it is going to be that kind of kind of feel, then you're going from 4/4 to that feel. Then this is where things change, because the pulse is going to have to change a wee bit. So instead of being a quarter note pulse, 2, 3, 4, it becomes a dotted quarter note pulse. So this becomes your connective tissue instead. So this time you'll have quarter note equals dotted quarter note. So you go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. And so that's one way of doing it. So you're either going to go 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you're going to go, which is the more common, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 1, 2. No, the more common one. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the more common change. But you'll notice that the one where you go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It feels like it moves faster, so the time change is more obvious. Whereas if you're doing 8th note equals 8th note, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can keep that chord note pulse going just like you could for the 7/8. It's just it's much more even this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's different ways in which you can make the transitions between the one time signature and the other one smooth or less smooth. It depends upon your stylistic decisions that you're making and why you're making them. As I've always said, when I'm teaching songwriting, when I'm teaching composition, specifically when I'm teaching composition to high school kids or even to undergrad or postgraduate kids, students, because by the time you get to undergrads, they're not kids anymore, they're young adults. And then by the time you get to postgraduate level, they are proper serious adults looking at, doing doctorates in music or something like that. So when I'm teaching people at that kind of level or at high school level, the thing I always ask my students is this: whatever they have just done or they are just about to do, I ask the question, why? Why are you doing that? What is your purpose? Justify that reason to have 7/8 going to 4/4 or 4/4 going to 7/8. What are you attempting to achieve? What is it you are trying to convey with your music? Because that is always the justification for making a decision. That's what you have to think about. Why am I doing this? What purpose is this time signature change or this metric modulation going to serve? How does it serve the song? How does it serve the melody? How does it serve the chord changes? How does it serve the mood and the vibe of the music that you're making? Now, in some cases, like the little piece we did here, it's kind of a little bit funky, a little bit fusion orientated. These kind of things get done in fusion music all the time. And so in this case, the justification is that it is stylistically appropriate to do it. And I'm doing it for contrast purposes, which is literally why I made this, because I wanted to contrast the 7/8 with the 4/4. So I made it a little bit obvious. But that was kind of my rationale for doing it. But if this was a serious composition, albeit in a jazz funk kind of fusion kind of context, then yes, I would still be asking myself the same thing. Why am I wanting to go to 4/4? What is it I'm trying to achieve? What does it set up in terms of the composition? So those are the kind of things to think about whatever you are deciding to do. And yes, sometimes the answer to that question is, it just sounds flipping cool. It just sounds great. Therefore, I want to do it. Fair enough. You have answered the question successfully. If it, as Duke Ellington, one of the greatest composers of the 20th century, said, if it sounds right, it is right. All right? Whether it perfectly follows the rules and the laws of music and music theory is irrelevant. If it sounds good, it is good. And that overrides everything. Music theory must serve that purpose. That function is to make music sound good. That's what music theory is for. That's why I studied it for as long as I did. That's why I got into musicology. That's why I got into music history, because I wanted to find out what makes things sound good. What makes things sound great? What makes music sound so good? And how can I improve my own music making as a result of discovering what sounds good and why does it sound good? So once I got to the why does it sound so good, and I answered that question, it sounds so good because this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, these chords are going on, this scale is being played over these chord changes, this drum groove is being played, this juxtapose what the guitar player is doing and the bass player is doing this that either goes with the kick drum or goes away from the kick drum. All of these things, I go, these are the things, these are the ingredients that are making it sound good. So I'm not only answering the why, I'm answering the what. But ultimately, the net result is we want music that sounds good. Whether it adheres to rules and principles and guidelines or not is another story. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to follow music theory guidelines and principles and conventions in order to sound good. It doesn't. I mean, that's been tried and tested, you know, from the 1940s on through the 20th century and into the early 21st century, for goodness sake, where constantly kind of all of those envelopes, all those boundaries were being pushed in order to find that answer that actually it sounds good, that's important. But you have to push those envelopes first, and that's where you get people like Schoenberg and Berg and Webern and people like that who wrote atonal music. Well, you had to check out what atonal music is like in order to contrast that with tonal music. And, you know, you've got great sounding music that is atonal. You've got great sounding music that is completely diatonic and tonal and non-chromatic whatsoever. Both can peacefully coexist. And in fact, you can take a little bit from this camp and a little bit of this camp, and you can put them together and see what comes out in the cooking pot. And if it sounds good, it is good. So I hope that answers that question. It was a heck of a feckin' long answer, but I hope it did the job for you, because I want to get to the other question, Stephen's question. Can you talk about the significance of 432 Hertz? I can talk about it from a strictly musicological and music history point of view. And to do that, I'm going to go over to this screen so you can see me a little bit better, although you don't really need to look at me if you don't want to. So, before I answer that question, I have to answer another question, which is, why does A equal 440? That is a long and complicated question, because it hasn't always equaled 440. It, at one point, was as much as 450 and as little as 416, and there are other tunings. Because Western music grew up in different parts of Europe at different times with composers that didn't really interact with each other, certainly at first. And then, you know, the horse-drawn cart and then automobiles made it much easier, and of course airplanes made it much easier for musicians from one part of Europe to be able to travel to another part of Europe very quickly and be able to interact with each other and be able to explore each other's music. So you had like things going on over in Italy, kind of in its little microcosm, and then things going on over in Germany in its own little microcosm. And then you had music going on in Austria that had its own little microcosm. And then you had music in England developing at its own little microcosm, right? And, you know, we are talking here mostly about what we would now classify as classical music. Although, you know, this umbrella term classical music nowadays defines music that is from about 1550 through until the present day. So a very, very large period of history and a large body of music and a lot of development. So you had different instruments growing and developing. So before you had the violin and the cello and the viola, you had viols, which are the precursor to those stringed instruments. And they were tuned to A being 4/16. And of course you had the harpsichord. That was the accompaniment instrument of the time. You know, there were no big 100-piece orchestras. There were small little chamber groups that basically had some recorders, some flutes, the precursor to the clarinet and the cor anglais, and you would have your rhythm section, which was the harpsichord and the violoncello, which is the precursor to the cello. And these instruments, there was not even such a thing as equal temperament at this time. So the distance between the, what we now call semitones was not codified or unified in any sense. So when they were designing things like harpsichord, keyboard instruments, and clavichords, right? The low notes here, the interval between a C and a C sharp was big. It was more like a tone and a half by today's standards. But at the other end, it was tiny. It was almost microtonal. So basically the way instruments were designed to start with, the lower down the keyboard you went, the wider the interval that we now call a semitone was. And the further up, the smaller. So basically the flatter the notes got, the lower you got, and the sharper the notes you got, the sharper the notes got as you went up, and the smaller the intervals got between each individual note. This makes it very difficult to play with other instruments. So I can't play with a viol player when I'm playing my harpsichord or my clavichord, because the intervals between a semitone on my keyboard instrument are not the same as the viol. The viol has different things. Back then, violins, or the precursors to the violin, they had frets, much like a lute or a guitar has today. The guitar has frets today, the lute before that had frets. And the viol had frets. And the thing is that those intervals were different again. So if I was telling my viol player to play a C sharp, their C sharp would be kind of here, right? So if I was saying play this C sharp here, and then if I wanted to harmonize that with an A below that and an E, so we make an A major triad, and I want my viol player to play this note at the top here, when I play these two notes underneath it, they don't sound very good. They don't sound very harmonious. They don't sound very nice. Why? Because of the harmonic series, because these notes are a little bit lower than this note, and the interval between them is a little bit wider. And so they're not in tune, what we would now call in tune. Okay? And so in about I forget the exact year, but 1650 something, there was a decision made amongst a lot of composers and some mathematicians. How do we solve this problem? And it was a mathematical problem that they needed to solve. They needed to get these intervals exactly the same, so that it didn't matter whether I play a C down here, or a C here, or a C here. Other than the difference in octave, they are all exact multiples of each other. Exact multiples of each other, right? So equal temperament was developed. And what does that mean? That means that the temperament between each semitone was evened out. So now we have 12 tones in our octave. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's your 12 tones. And we call this 12-tone equal temperament. And so this now forms the basis of everybody now being able to play more in tune with each other. This is a big victory for composers and for music groups. But it doesn't stop there, because we needed to now find an acceptable tuning that works for a larger number of instruments, now that musicians are all beginning to gather in groups and play together for pleasure, for fun, for enjoyment, and also to draw a crowd who would also be able to engage with the music. And so they realized that certain, if you try and get a French horn to play the same note as our violinist and the same note as our oboe player, we got a problem. And that problem is they're all slightly out of tune with each other. And it's not a matter of just adjusting the we just adjust the tuning, we just adjust the intonation. No, the problem was more fundamental than that. And the problem was this. The problem was, though we had solved the equal temperament thing, we hadn't agreed at what pitch everything should be unified, agreed upon. And so you started to see in parts of Germany, well, let's tune everything to 4/16. So if we say middle A, which is this note here, this should be set to 4/16 and not anything else. So, okay, we'll all set that to that. This is good because now everybody can kind of play in tune with each other until you start playing in different keys. And they found that there were maybe 3 different keys where everything sounded great together. So if you played in 4/16, if you play in the key of E major, sounds great. If you play in the key of G major, sounds okay, but that kind of perfect 5th interval it's less perfect now. It's not, that sounds good to our ears, but it's more like, it's kind of more like that. So it's not exactly perfect. So what do we do about this? And so these other people who are in this other part of Europe said, hey, we've started tuning our music to 440. And the guys that were tuning to 4/16 said, does it work with lots of instruments? Like, can we broadly agree that this works and intonation is less of an issue? Yeah, we kind of can, because we can all play in like different keys now. Not just these 3 keys where it sounds okay. Like D major, for example. D major was kind of, yeah, okay. But as soon as you start trying to play in C major sounds horrible. Really sounds awful. A major sounds pretty ugly because this set of intervals here isn't perfect in A equals 432 or anything else. And so, cut a long story short, what happened was everyone said, okay, what is the tuning for A that is going to work best for everybody, for our entire ensemble, for our entire orchestra? And so it was agreed that 440 is going to work the best. This took time to kind of spread, but eventually spread it did, until pretty much everybody across the entire European continent was tuning A to 440. And when they did that, suddenly you could play in all sorts of other vibrant keys like E flat. E flat was a key you could never play in before. B flat major, A flat major. Suddenly there's a whole wealth of keys that people were discovering really for the first time, because they have hitherto hadn't really been able to play with them except on their own. And that's where you get Bach's 48 Preludes and Fugues to celebrate, he called it the well-tempered clavier, the equal-tempered keyboard. Because he was so happy about it, he wrote a prelude and a fugue in every major and every minor key, which is pretty extraordinary that he did that. So, to cut a long story short, we got to A equals 440 over a mathematical consensus and an experiential consensus over what is going to be best for all instruments to be able to work together in an equal-tempered harmony, because you had to make equal temperament work for all instruments. Now, this does mean that there are some instruments that still today have some inherent design flaws in that they were originally never designed for equal temperament, and now we kind of forced them to play equal temperament. So I'll give you an example. Trumpet. Trumpet has 3 valves, and you make the notes by a combination of lip pressure, changing your embouchure shape, and the amount of air you put through the instrument, and the valves, right? But on most modern trumpets, you'll see that there's a little kind of ring built into the side of the trumpet. And we call this the third valve slide. What does this do? Well, with your other hand, whilst you're valving with these fingers here, you are using this to adjust the intonation because the instrument is not perfect in equal temperament. So you'll know, as any brass player will, that certain notes don't intonate very well, which means they are a little bit sharp or they're a little bit flat. And so how do we get around this? Well, you can adjust your lip, but you can also use your third valve to fine adjust it to really bring that note in. Good trumpet players learn to listen very closely to what they play as they play, so that those get sorted out and those kind of intonation areas basically don't become an issue. And in fact, if you listen to modern symphonic music, you know, like the music of John Williams or Ray Vaughan Williams or something like that, played by the London Symphony Orchestra, it will sound mesmerizingly beautiful. Everybody's tuned to 440 and it sounds mesmerizingly beautiful. Listen to Holst the Planets, listen to Neptune, the last movement. If you really want that kind of cosmic, out there kind of experience with music where you can really just close your eyes and just absorb the music washing over you slowly and gently, listen to Neptune. But guess what? Everything is tuned to 440. And it still sounds incredible. And it still is mesmerizing. And it's still incredibly beautiful and evocative. So, the answer to the question about 432 is there is no scientific rationale for saying, hey, 432 is kind of the connection to the energies of the heavens or whatever. That's pseudoscience. That's not real science. That's not real music. Yes, music can do a lot for people. It really can. It doesn't have to be tuned to 432 to do something for somebody, especially somebody who is suffering with a terminal illness and they know that their days are coming close to the end. You don't have to be in 432 to ease their pain and ease their suffering. You can be in 440 and still have exactly the same effect. And it can certainly have a healing effect upon people. If you really want to dive into this 432 thing and listen to something from a very, very musical and watch a video on this subject from a very musicological as well as historical standpoint, my good friend Adam Neely on his YouTube channel has a great video on why 432 sounds bad. And the reason, because it does. Why? Because if you shift the whole harmonic series by 8 cents, which is, people, this is the other argument, people say, oh, you're only shifting things by 8 cents. Your own, and you're not just shifting the fundamental tones. The fundamental note that is this. This note is not just an A, it's an A plus a series of overtones that make up that A. If you start shifting those overtones, which are, by the way, they're not only, it's not only sound, it's science. Because all sound is just moving the air column by a certain frequency amount, right? So this is 440 cycles per second. That's what we mean by 440 hertz. 440 cycles per second, and that's the cycle at which the air column is moved to make that note. That's why we hear the note. We hear the note because the air column is moved by that frequency, and our ears detect that. And so we interpret that as that particular pitch because of how much the air column moves. The air column is made up of a fundamental tone and then a series of harmonic overtones. And they all sound at the same time. The fundamental tone is the strongest of all of them, but without all of those harmonic overtones, the fundamental tone does not sound Okay? You have to have all of those overtones plus the fundamental to make that note sound. That's how the science of sound works. Okay? So, if you shift the harmonic series by 8 cents, you will find that some notes played together and some notes on their own do not sound right. They do not sound good. They may sound a little warbly. All right, and that means that when you play, particularly at 432, if you play in D major sounds horrific because the major third is not quite a major third. It's not quite a minor third either. And the fifth, the fifth below, that note there doesn't sound quite right either. It's not quite an A sharp. It's not quite an A flat. It's kind of somewhere in between the cracks. The only note that really works in 432 is that D. But these two just don't sound right. Check out Adam Neely's video. He goes into great depth on it, and he presents an extremely good, well-balanced argument as to why 432 is just bad. Okay? It's bad science, and most of the arguments for tuning to that are pseudoscience, and they really hold, for my opinion, they hold no validity whatsoever. So we are out of time. I'm pretty sure that that has stimulated a whole bunch of questions. Guitar tuning is E-A-D-G-B-E, but bass guitar tuning is B-E-A-D-G-C. Well, that's only the case on a 6-string bass guitar. It's not true on a 4-string bass, and the 4-string bass basically predates all of the basses. 5-string and others. Kane Rock says, Chinese theorists came up with an approximation for 12-tone equal temperament. Zhu was the first person to mathematically solve 12-tone equal temperament, which he described in his Fusion of Music calendar in 1580. Yes, and I largely suspect that people from the West, mathematicians in the West and musicologists in the West, were probably highly influenced by his discoveries as well. So I don't doubt the historicity of that. Brett says the healing claims of 432 work on a presupposition fallacy that all people react to the same stimuli in the same manner. Correct. All right, do we have any other questions? Rock says, sorry, late and pissed off now. Totally forgot. Rock, no problem, mate. It's okay. You can catch the replay. Kane says, some of the first Europeans to advocate equal temperaments are Lutenist Vincenzo Galilei. Yes, he was among the very first to mention equal temperament. Giacomo Gozzanis, yes, definitely. And Spinacino as well. Yeah. That's absolutely right. Simon Stebbing was the first to develop 12-tone equal temperament based on 12th root of 2, which he described in Van Spelling de Syncost, 1605, published posthumously in 1884. Yeah. Your music history is very good, my friend. Absolutely spot on. But yeah, I wanted basically to distill it down into, kind of a potted history. But yeah, by all means, people, I recommend you do a little bit of research on some of the things that Kane has pointed out there, because they are very, very good points and grounded in music history. So there we go. I think we got the end of the show. Gardner99 says, who got the after party? Well, it's not me and it's not Mike Johnson, because Mike is future boy. It will be like 7 o'clock in the morning for him, so he will be sound asleep. So I don't know. I don't know who's got the after show, to be honest. But it won't be me, because I don't have a Zoom account, unfortunately. Check out the part about semantics. Yes, absolutely. All right, folks, so we're at the end. If Billy wants to launch a Zoom, then Billy, please do pop that in the chat. There we go. Right on cue. All right, so if you want to join the after show party, then please come over to Billy's Zoom link that is linked in the chat there. And otherwise, I'll see you all on Sunday for Sunday Night Live. And by the way, we have less than 10 days left for the Halloween composing challenge with the Locrian Natural 6 scale and all of that fun stuff. We've already got some submissions. We've got about 14, I believe, submissions right now, which is great. So Rich and I are going to have a good little bunch to choose from, and we will be playing a selection in no particular order of our favorite ones from amongst all of the entries. And from amongst all of the entries, we will also pick a winner. So the winner may not be necessarily featured until after we've announced who that winner is. Then we will play the winning entry. And so that is going to be on the 27th of October. You must submit your work for consideration by that date. And then on the Sunday, the 29th, will be the big show where we will, like I said, Rich and I will be on the show together, and we will play our favorite ones. And then we will announce the winner. And Rich is the one who has organized the prize, and you will need to reach out to him after your name has been selected by us together. We will agree on who we think should be the winner. And yeah, you will need to reach out to Rich. He will give you instructions on how to do that. But otherwise, the rest of the people who enter, well done. Congratulations on entering and getting, it takes a lot of courage to get your music out there and get your music into the public. And that was part of this challenge. It was a composing challenge, composing to this very, very specific brief, but it was also a challenge to just get your music out there. And if you win some cool Presonus gear. So, I mean, what could, you can get better than that, I don't think. But for those of you that don't win, don't worry. This is not likely to be the last challenge that we do where there are prizes involved. There may be others. In fact, there likely will be others. Rich and I will put our heads together, and we will think about what we're going to do next. But just bear in mind that, obviously if there are prizes cost money. So, that's another thing to take into consideration. All right, folks. So I will see you all over in the after show. Thank you very much for coming. And until next time, which will be on Sunday, I'll see you then, folks. Good night.